My fellow Americans, my name is Billy Porter. I'm an actor, activist, and proud member of the LGBTQ community. It is my privilege to join you today. I'm here with Logo to touch base on the LGBTQ state of our union, reflect on a year of unprecedented tragedy and turmoil, and offer a glimpse of hope and healing for the year ahead. In 2020, I told you our union remained far from broken, and our responsibility as citizens has never been more urgent. Through our compassion and resilience, we survived a year of challenges that seemed insurmountable at times. And while we continue to face many of these adversities in 2021, I can confidently say our union remains strong as we march toward greatness and inclusivity. When I spoke to you a year ago, the disease caused by a rapidly spreading coronavirus had not fully begun its devastating impact. But in a matter of weeks, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted our way of life, both at home and around the world. Since then, over 500,000 Americans have lost their lives to the virus, the tragedy of which cannot be overstated. In one way or another, we all were forced to upend our routines to curb its spread as public health officials grappled with this unparalleled threat. I would be remiss to ignore the gruesome truth of the pandemic's disproportionate toll on our most vulnerable communities, including low-income Americans, people of color, and our LGBTQ family. But the devastation goes far beyond the unfathomable loss of life, laying bare long-standing inequities in our economic and healthcare systems. 64% of LGBTQ households reported experiencing pandemic-related job loss versus 45% of non-LGBTQ households. LGBTQ homes were also twice as likely to either be unable to access medical treatment or to have delayed seeking care. We must address these structural faults that will be with us long after the pandemic has subsided. But in the near term, medical advancements like COVID-19 vaccines offer some much-needed hope. But we are not out of the dark tunnel yet. The United States is still being ravaged by the virus, with thousands dying each and every day. And it sure as hell isn't taking a break so you can party and post about it on Instagram. It is imperative that we look out for one another and selflessly put our community's health above our desire to kiki in large groups until we can all safely dance under the disco ball again. While we cautiously celebrate hope for an eventual end to the global pandemic, we face another unabated crisis plaguing our country: hate-motivated violence against transgender Americans, particularly Black trans people. According to the Human Rights Campaign, at least 43 trans or gender nonconforming Americans were murdered in 2020, the vast majority of whom were Black. That makes this past year the deadliest by far since HRC began tracking trans homicides in 2013. This surge of violence is atrocious and unacceptable, and Americans made that clear. On just one day in June, more than 15,000 New Yorkers took to the streets in the name of Black trans lives during the Brooklyn Liberation March. With masks on and signs held high, we gathered safely to show our solidarity and demand justice. This grassroots organizing proved once again that our community can accomplish great things when we band together. We lift up our own and find strength in the collective fight to live happily in peace as our authentic, fabulous selves. We must do more, though, and we must do better to protect trans lives. It might even be said that the crowds in New York were so loud, so fierce, that their voices reached all the way to DC. Hundreds of miles away, on the same day, the Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling declaring that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects Americans from being fired simply because they're LGBTQ. But while the decision provided relief for the millions of LGBTQ Americans residing in one of the 28 states previously without such protections, the untimely death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and subsequent appointment of conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett has cast a shadow over future rulings for equality. Just last October, Justice Thomas and Alito openly stated their desire to overturn 2015's 5-4 decision legalizing gay marriage, writing that the court's former ruling had ruinous consequences for religious liberty and created a problem that only it can fix. Friends, we must not take our hard-won rights for granted. They always say it's darkest before the dawn, and honey, it is bleak out there, but there are reasons to be hopeful. In November, this country said, "Sashay away" to former President Donald Trump, with a record number of Americans voting to deny him a second term. While few expected him to go quietly into the night, we were shocked and saddened to see his never-ending attacks on truth and democracy reach a fever pitch in the waning weeks of his term. He is now the first president ever to be impeached twice, this time for inciting armed insurrectionists who desecrated our nation's legislature in an attempt to overthrow the will of the people. What happened at the U.S. Capitol will be another stain in our nation's history during the Trump administration. But it reminds us that we must tirelessly work to dismantle white supremacy, ignorance, and hatred, all of which have gone ignored and unchecked for far too long, including within our own community. Forging ahead, the LGBTQ community will have a Democratic president and majority in Congress, but we must see real, tangible change. It is our duty to hold all of those in power accountable, especially those we helped elect and who claim to be our allies. Thankfully, we now have an unprecedented number of LGBTQ elected officials in government who can ensure we have a seat at the table and a voice in the decision-making process. The rainbow wave of 2020 brought us many firsts, including Sarah McBride, the first trans state senator in our nation's history, as well as Mondaire Jones and Richie Torres, who became the first gay Black members of Congress. These individuals blaze a trail for our community, but true representation will only occur if others, just like you, follow in their footsteps. We all have a role to play in bettering ourselves, our communities, and our nation. Inaction, misinformation, and apathy are but tools of the oppressor. With life turned upside down this past year, we were forced to reckon with our values, take to the streets against what we know to be unjust, and for those fortunate enough, utilize wealth and privilege to amplify the voices of those doing the work. As the great James Baldwin said, "I love America more than any other country in the world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually." Brighter days are ahead of us if we continue to work toward them together. Be safe, be good to each other, and remember, we will feel joy again soon. Thank you. May God bless and protect the LGBTQ community, and may God bless the United States of America.